My best advice to incoming students is to be open and to stay open. The students I love are the ones I meet before they've made a decision even, and they'll meet me in sort of a fair, university fair, or on a visit to the campus, and I'll say, what are you interested in? And they'll say, no. They have no idea, and they're so scared to admit that they're not sure what they want to do. And then I'll meet some that will give me an answer. And then I can see that that's literally the thing that they've been saying over and over. And so the advice is, here you had the opportunity I didn't have, that I fought for, which is a place where you can take a different direction. You can come in thinking you want to do one thing, and it's not impossible in that first year to just experiment, open up, see what other things you can do. We encourage that. Were you always interested in philosophy? Take a class in philosophy and see if you like that, right? What about a language? You really wanted to understand a bit more about Indigenous language and culture? Take a class. We're not committing to that, but what you're doing is remaining open to the idea that this could be something that I love. And you can mix it up here. It's so much easier. You don't have to fight. You can say, I want to do this weird thing and that weird thing, and it can come together. From the beginning of a class to the end of a class, if I can have students see in themselves and reflect, I grew so much. That's what I'm interested in. What did you learn about you? What did you learn about your capacity and your ability? For me to send them out of the university with that kind of confidence and the ability to understand they may not have met something, a new app, a new technology, it doesn't matter. They know they can face it, and they've dealt with it before, and they will deal with it again, and they will succeed.
Hello and good evening. Joining us this evening to learn a little bit more about University of Toronto, Mississauga specifically. My name is Emily Mancuso. I'm the Assistant Director for Student Recruitment and Admissions at University of Toronto, Mississauga. I'm joined this evening by two colleagues. I would love to introduce our student staff, our student ambassador, Saumya, as well as my colleague, Amy, who will be supporting us with the event. Ladies, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Absolutely. I can go first. So hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Saumya. I am a fourth-year student here at the University of Toronto, Mississauga. And as Emily mentioned, I am a student staff within the Student Recruitment and Admissions Office.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amy, and I'm one of the recruitment officers within Student Recruitment and Admissions. I'm also a proud UTM alumna. I will be joining you in the chat, so feel free to send in any of your questions throughout the presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So the format of our event this evening will be, I'm going to start off with some general high-level information about University of Toronto, Mississauga that may be helpful for those of you that are starting to conduct your research or starting to think about applying to University of Toronto, Mississauga. As well, for those of you who have applied, we'll have a bit of information for you too. Then we'll be followed up by our wonderful student staff, Saumya, who's going to take you on a personal student tour. So her tour this evening is going to be to all of her favorite spots at UTM, and you'll get to learn a little bit more about her and ask her any questions that you may have. And as Amy mentioned, she's going to be here in the chat, so feel free to pose questions that you might have in the chat. If she doesn't get around to answering your question right away, we are going to hang around for some Q&A at the end. And if you have questions at the end that come to mind, we'll be happy to field those questions. So let's get started. First off, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. The land from which I'm presenting this evening, as well as the land on which the University of Toronto operates, for thousands of years has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Today, this meeting place where I'm presenting from at my home is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're very grateful at University of Toronto to have the opportunity to operate on this Indigenous land. So a few quick statistics and a few quick facts to start things off. Some things you may know. So first and foremost, we're a mid-sized institution and a mid-sized community unto itself within the University of Toronto. Mississauga campus is home to 15,000 undergraduate students. We have more than 60,000 global alumni, as well as 900 graduate students. Our students are studying across more than 180 different programs, so we have a wide range of courses that you can be choosing from 18 different academic departments. Within the broader University of Toronto, we are one university with 3 campus options. So one of the first choices that you'll be making when you're looking at University of Toronto is which campus would you like to study on? And bearing in mind that Mississauga campus unto itself is an incredible mid-sized community, again, of about 15,000 students. Why would you maybe consider Mississauga, and what are some key reasons why our students call Mississauga home? Well, first and foremost, we're a really innovative community. We're situated on a green campus that's an enclosed campus environment unto itself. We're a very modern facility. We have unique and dynamic programs. So depending on the program that you're looking at University of Toronto, it may be situated uniquely at Mississauga, as well as there are some programs that are offered across all 3 campuses. So you might then make the choice intentionally to specifically choose to study at Mississauga depending on the program or depending on what your interests are. We're a really supportive community. We're home to a number of global citizens. It's a very culturally diverse environment. And at the end of the day, we're University of Toronto. So you'd be studying at the #1 university in Canada and getting that globally ranked reputation and that globally ranked degree that is University of Toronto within the Mississauga community. In terms of areas of studies that we do offer, most of our programs are situated within these 3 core areas, which are arts, business, and science. Programs that are unique to the campus would include things like communications culture and information technology, theater and drama. The forensic science program was the first of its kind in Canada and is globally leading. And then certainly in terms of common areas that are also offered in other pockets of the University of Toronto would include areas like computer science, business, management, commerce, various science options. So you have quite a bit of breadth and depth to choose from at University of Toronto, Mississauga. Not only are our students committed to their academic studies and known for their passion for their various interests, they're also making the most experience while they're at University of Toronto. So our students get involved, and you'll hear a little bit about that from our colleagues that are on this chat today. Our students are taking the opportunity to seize all of the various opportunities that they have at U of T. A common opportunity that some of our students might seize would be experiential education opportunities to apply what they're learning in the classroom in a more implied environment, such as maybe working on research or gaining those skills that will prepare them for the workplace. And Saumya is going to talk a little bit about what her experiential education experience was like at UTM or is like as a student at UTM, as well as taking advantage of the various resources that are available to our students. We're committed to student success, and from the time our students join us at U of T, we ultimately want to support them in their time straight through to graduation. U of T is very proud of the fact that we have a high proportion of our students, 92%, that do continue on and graduate from their degree program of choice, and that's actually the highest rate within the province of Ontario and across Canada as well. Internationalizing your experience at UTM may be part of your experience. Some of you on this stream this evening may also be logging on from international locations. So maybe coming to Canada and studying at U of T may be international enough of an experience. We have more than 3,000 international students who call UTM their home within U of T. And we have more than 120 global partners where our students might choose to go and do something like a study abroad or internationalize or globalize their experience while they're at U of T. In addition to all of the extracurriculars that our students might be involved in, sports and recreation are certainly also an important aspect of student life. life at U of T and UTM. And even at these times now, when we're currently navigating this global pandemic, we're still offering a range of opportunities for our students to engage in virtual programming, students participating in various different sports, including varsity sports and athletics, which is the highest level of competition you'll find in higher education in Canada, as well as students who are maybe just taking advantage of the state-of-the-art fitness and recreation center, including an aquatic center on our campus as well. So we have a really dynamic campus environment that Saumya will have the pleasure of walking you through, as well as signaling to some of the important aspects of what life at Mississauga might look like for you. And that might include living in residence. We're home to more than 1,500 residence spaces across our campus, varying different styles of residence. And Saumya herself has also currently lives in residence and will speak about the different types that you would have to choose from. And ultimately finding your community as a student at U of T and specifically within the broader UTM community. Being a student at U of T may also include a vision for academic excellence, and perhaps you're already on a path for academic excellence already. For those students that are high achieving, at the time that you apply to UTM, you will be automatically considered for a number of different awards that would include our automatic scholarships that are entrance awards based, as well as we have a number of larger awards for international students who may be applying to the university. You do not have to be doing anything in particular specifically as a follow-up. These are awards where you're automatically considered at the time that you apply to University of Toronto. And how you would find out whether or not you would be awarded a scholarship would be communicated to you through our U of T Join portal. So if you have applied to U of T already, or if you're planning to apply to U of T, after you submit your application, you will receive login credentials for what we call our Join U of T portal. And that's where you're going to track the status of your application. And that's where we'll be communicating important information to you, including the decision on your admission, as well as which awards you might be awarded at the time of admission. And that awards usually are communicated about a week after admissions decisions are sent out. So some important key timelines to bear in mind is that for those of you that were looking to apply this year, hopefully you've submitted your application already for our international students. No need to worry if you have not already, because we do certainly still accept applications through to our deadline in mid-January. For our domestic students here in Canada, you're likely working towards that January application deadline. After you have submitted your application, most commonly through the OUAC, it's possible that you would then send your follow-up documentation, such as transcripts, any additional documentation we may be asking for in support of your application. We start to assess and evaluate files, and the majority of our decisions will start to go out in February through the month of May. For international students, rest assured that we try to get those out fairly swiftly so that you can make a decision that is informed and decide whether or not you're planning to move to Canada. And for our domestic students, we're also working in a timely fashion to get you those decisions by the respective published deadlines for across Canada. We will again continue to communicate to you through our Join U of T portal, which is where you'll get regular updates and you'll be able to track the status of your application on a regular basis. And then in most instances with our domestic students, the deadline to accept your offer is typically in early June. And for our international students, your deadline is usually a little bit earlier in early May. So that's the high level information that I have for you to start things off. Should you have any specific questions about applying to U of T Mississauga specifically, if you have questions about an application, do feel free to connect with us. There are a number of ways that you can connect. Our phone lines are currently open. We're regularly checking email, as well as a great place to continue your research and to learn a little bit more about what campus life looks like are our social channels at UTM Future. So on that note, I would love to invite my colleague Saumya back to the conversation. Saumya is a current student ambassador within our office, where she's now going to take you on her personalized tour of UTM.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Emily. That was a great introduction as to kind of the nitty-gritty behind admissions. And like Emily mentioned today, I will be taking you on a personalized tour of the University of Toronto Mississauga campus. So just as another general introduction, I am a fourth-year student here at UTM, and I originally came in for life sciences, but my current program spans across 3 admission categories. So I'm in comparative physiology as a specialist, I'm in neuroscience as a specialist, and I'm also in chemistry as a minor. I'm also a research student here at UTM doing two major projects. One is an undergraduate thesis project in biology within the Macmillan Lab, and the other one is an independent research project within psychology with the Vanderland Lab. So today I'm excited to share some personal experiences from my life as a UTM science student as we take a virtual tour of some of the most important spaces on campus to me. So firstly, we are going to start off with residence. All right, so for most of my undergrad, I was a commuter student, but this year I am living on residence. And I say this to my friends a lot, but it ironically happened during a year where I didn't actually need to commute that often. So on residence, I actually work as a peer academic leader, which is a PAL, and I lead an upper year community of biology students that are enrolled in the LLC program, and LLC stands for Living Learning Community. This means that I get the chance to offer my students more program-specific events throughout the year, as well as the chance to connect with their professors a little bit more, as you can see here. This is a fun little faculty field trip that we had virtually this year. And fun fact, I actually ended up getting an entire townhouse unit to myself, which has honestly been very fun for me. Normally our townhouses fit up to 4 students as roommates, but my housing area, Putnam Place, was also completely renovated. So I feel like I lucked out a little bit there. Right now, we are at about 50% capacity on residence, and the student and professional staff on residence work very hard to ensure that a strong sense of community is established and maintained even in this virtual space. So now we are going to head over to the Davis building. All right, so an important location for me in the Davis building is the UTM bookstore, since I've gotten the majority of my textbooks from here. I've personally rented most of my textbooks from the bookstore, since it's a really great option for books that you may not use for other classes, and you can just return the books at the end of the semester. It's also usually the cheapest option. So you can return them back to the bookstore at the end of the semester, but you can also buy your rented books if you want to keep them, which is what I did with this anatomy textbook. I found it was such an interesting class, and I just felt like I really had to keep it. You can also buy your textbooks brand new, or you can save money in a different way by buying a used copy from the bookstore that's still in great condition. Essentially, the bookstore is your one-stop shop for all of your course materials, and they offer these different options for textbooks based on your personal preferences and budget. So on the upper level of Davis, you will find our newly renovated food court. Now, with COVID-19 restrictions in place right now, our food court is still open for grab-and-go options only. This year, I have a meal plan, and last year, I had a campus value plan, and both of these allowed me to budget my food and drink spending really well in different ways. So if you have a dietary restriction or you're just a picky eater like I am, there are tons of food services around campus that can support your dietary requirements, as well as your picky eating habits. Actually, a lot of my social time that I spent with friends around the Davis cafeteria was just grabbing food and hanging out in our seating area right here. And honestly, right before a lab, I would grab a bite to eat in our food court and study for my lab in the science wing, which is something I want to talk about next. So the science wing is also very important to me as a science student because I spend a lot of my time for class in this building for labs, which are known as practicals at UTM. So all the labs as the science student, or I guess as a science student, are held in here. And so it was actually in these smaller size labs that I met my best friend, Rachel. In first year biology, she just happened to walk in and sit at my desk on the first day, and the rest is history. You never know who you're going to meet in these sorts of classes. Now, when I was in first year, I absolutely loved the size of these smaller size classrooms because it reminded me more of a high school size class. And I got to chat more one-on-one with my TA than I could in a lecture hall of, say, 500 people. And as someone who's interested in graduate school now, learning about my TA's research is always fascinating. And I find that labs are a really, really good way to connect with them about that. And speaking of research, as I mentioned, I am actually currently a research student in biology with my advisor, Louie, who was actually my TA in first year biology. So even though my classes right now aren't happening in person at all, I do still spend a lot of time in the science wing going into lab for my research project. And now we're going to head over to the Innovation Complex. Okay, so this is the Innovation Complex, which houses commerce and management. And one of the major resources I want to talk to you about today in this building is the Office of the Registrar. Now, I actually work within the Office of the Registrar. As Emily mentioned earlier, I am a student ambassador within the UTM Student Recruitment and Admissions Office. And this is one of the many offices on campus that actually hires students for the work study program. Now, the work study program is a program where students can have part-time jobs on campus while studying at the same time. And I find that this is a great way to get experiential learning opportunities while still being able to balance your courses. And I feel so lucky to be sharing this office with amazing folks like my colleagues who are here tonight. In general, the Office of the Registrar is here to answer any questions that you may have regarding academics, financial aid, anything like that. These folks all probably know my name by now because of how many appointments I've made just to ask questions about my program and finances and things like that. But it's a really great opportunity for students to learn more about what they can access here in their time at UTM. So now we are going to head over to our next building, which is the CCT building. So one of the liveliest buildings on campus by far is the CCT building, which stands for Communication, Culture, and Technology. I don't spend that much time in this building, but something I did always like as I passed through here was that there was always something happening in our CCT atrium. Before COVID-19, it was always packed with these different clubs and societies, and they had tables and booths there to showcase their services, or to showcase their events. It was a really great time to connect with a lot of clubs and societies and even university departments that were on campus. Anytime I was passing through this building, I was typically headed to the library, which is connected to this building. So let's head over there now. All right, now I'd like to talk a little bit about our library on campus. And I like to say that I wouldn't be a science student if I didn't spend a lot of time in the library. Not to mention, we have a very conveniently located Starbucks right outside our library, so the supply of peppermint mochas definitely helped my exam studying. So the library has a team of librarians and research specialists who work with students at this reference and research desk. They're available for assignment help, to help with research, and as a research student myself, I'm actually able to book remote appointments with these specialists in my field to help me as I progress through my virtual psychology research project with the Vanderland Lab. The circulation desk is also here, the informations and loan desk, and they're able to loan out library books and some other materials for students, like laptops, chargers, calculators. I actually only found out the calculator thing after I really needed it. I wrote this midterm test in chemistry in first year, and I realized that I had the wrong calculator and I couldn't use it for that particular test. So I wrote the entire test without a calculator. 7 out of the 9 questions needed one. And needless to say, I learned my lesson that day. So all you really need is your U of T student card, and you will be able to loan out these materials from the information and loan desk. Right next to the library, we have the instructional center. So let's head there now. Okay, so the Instructional Center, otherwise known as IB, is another one of our busiest buildings. I've had the majority of my classes in this building throughout my undergrad. Class sizes at UTM can range anywhere from around 25 students in smaller tutorials or practicals to 500 students in our largest lecture halls, like IB 110, which is shown here. Some classes can definitely be intimidating at first in terms of their size, but with the transition to online learning recently, it's been interesting for me to try to navigate collaboration in that online environment. So as I mentioned, I commuted to and from UTM for the first 3 years of my university career. And if you know the area, I come from Pickering. And if you don't know the area, that's okay. All you really need to know is that people were surprised when I told them I commuted from that far to UTM every day. So this shuttle that's shown here, the UTM shuttle, is great because if you want to take a class at the St. George campus, that's where it drops you off. So it's very convenient. But if you're also thinking about commuting to and from the UTM campus, this is a fantastic resource. Not only did it shorten my trip, but it actually saved me a lot of money on my commute too. You can even just go to explore downtown Toronto for free with the shuttle. And yes, it is free for UTM students. All you need is your student card to show on the bus. There are also tons of study spaces here too in IB, with quiet zones for individual studying or private study rooms for 4 or more people. I typically loved booking those study rooms with my friends right before an exam, especially if we all had the same exam, because most of them were held in IB. So now we're going to head over to our newest building on campus. So we often refer to this building as MN, and I absolutely love MN. When the university first opened this building, I probably spent the most amount of time here. As our newest building, it is bright and beautiful with a lot of natural light and a lot of open space, not to mention a lot of beautiful study spaces that me and my friends hung out in. This building is primarily for humanities and social sciences areas of study. So while my departments aren't located here, I find it fitting that the full name of this building, Manjiwe Nandamoinan, means gathering of minds. And it reflects the amount of social time I spent with my friends here in between classes. Now we're going to talk about Deerfield Hall, which is connected to the MN building. Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning, I am in the Neuroscience Specialist Program, which is a part of the Department of Psychology. So if you're interested in applying to psychology, the Neuroscience program is something you may also be interested in. This building holds the Department of Psychology, so I've spent a lot of time here both for classes and for labs. There are a ton of quiet study areas on the upper floors here as well, so if the library was ever full, this was often my next best bet. And as a coffee lover, another thing about this building is that we have a second Starbucks that was just recently built here. So no matter what side of campus I was on, I could always get myself a peppermint hot chocolate to warm myself up during the colder weather. Now let's head over to our student center. So the Student Center is our primary student hub, and it is one of my favorite places on campus to meet up with friends, grab some food, and participate in clubs. So the UTM Students Union, or the UTMSU, is located in this building, and I've been involved with them as both a volunteer and a contract employee for the past 3 years. I'm also an executive member for the Arundel Biology Society, which is an academic society on campus, and we have an office in this building. So when the university was open, I used to host office hours for bio students to just pop by and learn more about the society, our events, all that sorts of stuff. We also have a great pub on campus, which is the Blind Duck Pub. Personally, I think that some of the best and cheapest food on campus here is located here. Not to mention, we also have a cha time located here. So if you're a fan of bubble tea, this is great for you as well. I love to grab bubble tea, even now in between my my online classes. So both the Blind Duck and cha time are open for takeout only during COVID-19 right now. So you know what, I may actually end up going to get some cha time after this event. And so with that being said, that is the end of my very personalized virtual campus tour. Thank you again for joining us for this virtual visit around the University of Toronto, Mississauga. I was so happy to show you some of my favorite places on campus and hopefully give you an inside look into the experience of a UTM science student such as myself. I look forward to hopefully seeing you on campus very soon. And so if you have any questions about programs, admissions, scholarships, or anything related to my student experience or anything else at all, you're welcome to put some questions in the chat, and myself and my colleague Emily will do our best to answer them. And so with that, I would like to call back Emily and Amy right now. And Amy, I would love to hear about any engagement that we had in the chat.
Amy, we could really see those questions coming fast and furious at you. So I very quickly wanted to mention to our audience here before we get started with the Q&A. First and foremost, Saumya, thank you so much for that incredible tour. It was really lovely to hear your personal UTM tour. And, you know, we've worked together for a while, and even every time I hear you give a tour, I learn a little bit more about you. So thank you for that. For our audience, we will continue to host a number of upcoming events. So if this evening we're not able to answer your questions specifically, you're more than welcome to connect directly with our admissions team, as well as if you visit a resource called discover.utoronto.ca. That's discover.utoronto.ca, and we'll put that link in the chat shortly. There's a fantastic tool there where you are able to see a number of the upcoming sessions and general information sessions, as well as some targeted sessions that you'll be able to learn a little bit more about U of T, UTM specifically. We would also love to encourage you to also continue to check out our @UTM Future. But we're gonna open this up now and try and do our best to answer some questions. I saw all sorts of admissions-based questions flowing through. So Amy, what were some of the questions that you saw?
So a very popular question, Emily, and I think there's a lot of question relating to the timeline. So there's a lot of questions relating to when they would expect a decision. So could you elaborate or reiterate a little bit more to our audience when they would expect a decision?
Yeah, happy to answer that. I also happen to notice those ones flowing through as well. So for our international students, it's likely that many of you may have applied, as we had an early application deadline in early November, and we're starting to collect supporting documentation, starting to open files initially and have a look at the documentation that we have. So we would encourage anyone who's already applied to continue to log into your Join U of T portal to check the status of your application to see if we may be requesting any additional documentation, like a self-reported grades form, or whether we're asking you to submit any kind of mid or interim results. And then the next step is we'll start to release decisions. We will likely start to release some decisions potentially as early as January, but rest assured, if you have not heard from us in January, the bulk of our decisions will start to go out in the month of February, March, April. And then for our domestic students, it is possible that you may have decisions in the month of May. For our domestic and international prospective applicants, you can still apply to University of Toronto, and you have the option to apply to more than one campus and more than one program. And the deadline is published as mid-January. So we would recommend, you know, if you've decided that you want to apply to U of T for this year and you know that that's part of your plan, take the time. It's a really short, mostly biographical information. where we're going to ask you to list what programs you'd like to apply to, tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of your name, your date of birth, your mailing address, and so forth. So it's a really short application process. I did also see some questions coming in asking us about supplemental process or whether or not we looked at things like co-curricular activities. The answer to that is, for the most part, no. The majority of the programs at Mississauga campus will look predominantly just based on your academic achievement. There are a small number of programs at U of T and at UTM specifically, theater and drama comes to mind, where you would have an additional audition that would be part of that process. That this year will be running in a remote setting, so you can audition from a distance in an online format. And then for a small other handful of programs on the Scarborough campus, as well as the St. George campus, you may be asked for supplementary or next steps. So you can do a little bit of research by looking at our general admissions guidelines, but for UTM, it's predominantly just based on your academic achievement. Last kind of comment in this space is I did see some questions coming through about which results we're looking at. We will generally, in the first instance, look at your grade 11 as well as your early grade 12 results. If we have enough information there to make a decision, it's possible we may make a decision on the basis of grade 11 achievement and early grade 12. Don't worry if perhaps grade 11 was not your strongest and maybe you're not off to as great of a start in grade 12 as you would hope. Rest assured, we'll circle back and we'll reopen your file a little bit further down the line when we have some more results available. So provide us with what you have at this point, and then should you have mid or interim grades available through December, January, some systems have them available in February, you'll follow up by sending that into U of T or uploading it to the Join portal or self-reporting your information, and we'll move from there. So I hope that helps with some reassuring and general information on what our timelines look like. I have noticed there are quite a few people both internationally as well as domestically online here. So welcome to everyone who's joined us from both across Canada as well as from, I'm sure, many different destinations around the world.
Thanks so much, Emily, for the rundown on how admissions will be definitely with such an unprecedented, I'm sure you've heard of this many times, this academic year. It definitely helps to have a detailed timeline of when potentially they would be hearing a decision. I'm going to toss it over to Saumya because we do have some questions about student life and your program. So with our first question is that we have Dina, who's also interested in neuroscience and physiology. And if they have applied to life science, can you tell us a little bit more of how your timeline went from being admitted into studies in life sciences, then going over with your chosen specializations, and tell us a little bit more about your research, because that's such a cool opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a fantastic question as well. Thank you for the question. So in terms of that, I actually applied to life sciences as well, and that's the admission category that I got into. And so the way it works is you'll be admitted, if you were successful in your application, to a specific admission category, and you'll be able to take certain courses that are called prerequisites in your first year. And so essentially at the end of your first year, when you've completed at least 4.0 credits at UTM, you'll be able to specifically request your program of study. And so my admission category was in life sciences, but I took first year psychology, and I guess I liked it so much that I wanted to go into neuroscience. And so I requested neuroscience as a program of study at the end of my first year, as well as comparative physiology. And so if you get into a particular admission category, based on the prerequisites that you take in your first year, if you're successful in your application, you can definitely play around with what kinds of programs that you're interested in. There's so many interdisciplinary options here at UTM. And in terms of how we get into research, I'm really happy you asked about that, actually, because I love talking about my research. To keep it short, sweet, and simple, I got into my research through connecting with my professors and my TAs, or my teaching assistants. And so I knew that they had research labs here at UTM that I was really interested in. And so I spoke with them a little bit. I went to office hours and I asked them if they're looking for any research students. We have opportunities such as the Research Opportunity Program, or the ROP, where you can gain course credit for that, as well as things like senior thesis courses or independent research courses. You're also able to volunteer or have an internship opportunity. And if you're interested in that, I'd recommend checking out the Experiential Education Unit website at UTM. Hopefully we can get that link in the chat very soon. But thank you for asking. It's been a very fun time, and that was a fantastic question, Dina.
Thanks, Saumya. And everyone is raving about how awesome your presentation is. So I'm just going to be putting on some compliments right here. Someone
Thank
saying
you
that
very
they
much.
are super happy that there's bubble tea on campus. That is something I definitely miss as an alumna, with just having to walk over to bubble tea when you need that extra sugar rush, or when you're happy about like finishing off an essay or a final. They've really enjoyed it. So great job, Samya. I'm just going to be pulling up some more questions. We did have a question, and before I pull it up, I wanted to ask you already, could you tell us a little bit more about specialists, majors, and minors? Because when students start their research on their programs, they're presented with a plethora. There's so many programs at U of T, which is so exciting, but then also it's challenging because how do you decide on how to major, minor, and what really it means to be doing a double minor or double major at U of T?
So I'm happy to kick that off, Saumya. And then if you want to add in from the student perspective, I did also see that question flowing through a fair bit, and it's a pretty common question. So the first thing I often like to share is rest assured you do not have to know exactly what combinations of majors, minors, and specializations you may be looking at U of T. And I'd be curious to hear from you, Saumya, about whether or not you knew precisely the combination that you're pursuing now when you first applied to U of T. So the key information for our prospective students that you'll want to know is that there's incredible breadth and depth and choice available to you at U of T. At U of T, we have more than 700 areas of studies and literally thousands of courses that our students can choose from. And what a major, minor, and a specialization is it's really the depth or how deep you can go into a given area of study. So a specialist would be a very deep dive. That would be a program where a student would have structured or chosen a program where the majority of their credits would have been in a particular area of study. Major is a combination of credits, again, which is a fairly deep dive, but you can do double majors across many of the programs at U of T. There are options to do majors and minors. You can do 2 minors and a major. So ultimately, there are a lot of different ways that you can combine and really map out your time at U of T. There are some programs that are professionally aligned that may take you on that deeper dive in order to be prepared for that particular profession. And then there are a lot of programs where you can really define what those combinations will look like in your first and second, and sometimes even in your third year, be changing course. So rest assured that when you come to university, you would have the opportunity as well to work with an academic advisor and really map out what that might look like. You can combine programs that are alike. So if you're super passionate about business and economics and marketing, you can take courses in those 3 areas and combine them in a combination of a specialist degree, a major, and 2 minors, 2 majors. But at the same time, if you have very differing interests, like say, for example, you wanted to go down the pathway of science, but you had a passion for the French language, you can certainly combine different areas of interest. So Saumya, happy to hand it over to you. And I know Amy, having been a graduate from the university, I'd be curious to hear what your experiences were like when you were first applying or when you first got here, from what you thought you were going to do at university to kind of maybe where you've landed with your majors, minors, and comments on specializations as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. I can take it on very quickly if that's all right. So I actually, to your point earlier, Emily, I did not know which program at all I wanted to go into when I first was admitted to UTM. I was just very passionate about life sciences in general. And I used my first year as an opportunity to take courses outside of my required prerequisite courses. I took a lot of electives outside of just the general sciences. And I used that opportunity to focus on what I might be interested in. Like I mentioned, I took first year psychology as just an elective because I thought it'd be interesting. And it turns out it's one of my favorite courses. And so I was originally in a completely different program. I was actually in a major in biology for health sciences and a double minor in psychology and chemistry. And over the years, my program choices changed just because of the types of courses I took and that I was interested in. And so, Amy, I'd love to hear your perspective on what your program choice was as well and how you came about that.
Very similar to your situation. And I think this is a common experience at U of T, which is fantastic that we take an elective, we become so passionate about it, and it inspires us to pursue further studies in it. In my scenario, it was I got into psychology. I was admitted into psychology, and I've loved biology throughout high school. And so I already had in the back of my mind that potentially this was the two combination. Maybe I'll do a double major or a specialization. But then I found linguistics. And this was a subject that I had no idea, didn't know what this means. I thought that it meant learning languages and just, becoming like a polyglot. But actually, it's like learning about how humans communicate and how we learn speech sounds. And I become so passionate about it. I ended up doing research as well at UTM. And it really goes to show that with the depth and the breadth of knowledge, or rather courses that we have at U of T, you learn so much about topics that maybe might have not have reached to you as I was in high school. Linguistics was not a class offered at my high school, and then growing passionate about it and going really into a deep dive and learning more. So I ended up with a major in psychology with a double minor in biology and linguistics. Those are my program combinations. We did have, now that we're getting into a topic of research, and you'll find that Saumya and I are both very, very passionate about research at U of T because it was such a phenomenal time in our undergraduate careers. I think there's a little bit of a confusion of what consists within the research. So can you tell us a little bit more, perhaps in your research experiences, what kind of projects or tasks you've had and some things that you've learned out of it?
Absolutely. I love all the research questions. I rarely get to talk so in depth about it. I'm so happy that you're asking about this, folks. So in terms of what research is consisted of, it can consist of many different things. There's so many interdisciplinary research areas and so many professors doing research in those areas. But specifically what it means is you will have the opportunity to either design your own project where you're looking deeper into an area of study, a very particular area of study, I would say, or you get the opportunity to work with a professor on a project that they've already outlined. So for example, in my second year, I did a research opportunity program, or an ROP, with Dr. Fiona Rall of first year biology. And hers was a literature review project. So it was mainly what you would call a dry lab project. I spent most of the time on my computer doing computer work. And right now I am doing what's known as a wet lab project. So I am actually working in lab with chemicals, with materials to research essentially protein expression in yeast cells. And so that's been a very, very fun experience. But there's so many different types of research opportunities. And as Amy mentioned, she's also been quite involved with research in general. So I'd love to hear what your research experience consisted of and what drew you to it.
For sure. I feel you. I don't get asked about research often, even as a recruitment officer. So when someone brings it up and be like, oh, my time to shine, I love talking about it. And when I'm asked what my favorite courses were at U of T, it really was research opportunity program courses, because that opportunity to work hand in hand with your professor, develop a project. I did 2 ROP projects, one in psychology, and we looked at memes, which was super cool. I never thought that something that I share on social media and pass around with my friends would be of an academic topic. And we wanted to see why people share images online and how that affects their communication. Then later on, we also dive into YouTube videos and why do people enjoy ASMR videos, or those videos that have these high quality sounds and makes you feel like tingling sensation. Like, what does that mean to have that tingling sensation? And do people use this to manage their self-care and well-being? And then going over in language studies, looking at accents and celebrating how the way that we speak and the way that our voices sound are a celebration and a combination of our shared experiences and upbringing. So as you can tell, I can go on and on about this. Very exciting stuff. And I hope that when you become a student at the University of Toronto, you have these similar opportunities to really explore what inspires you and interests you and be able to share with a larger audience. Now I'm going to go off with some of our questions now in terms of connecting with professors, because in this question, they were looking more so about getting to know a program, but I'm going to tweak the question a little bit into how are your interactions like with Professor Saumya, and can you tell us a little bit more about what office hours, what that means, first of all, and how that looks like now that we're in this virtual setting or online classes?
That's a fantastic question. And I think it's so important too to recognize that university is first and foremost about your academics, but it's also a fantastic opportunity to be able to connect with your peers, with your instructors, and to be able to network and make those connections for the future opportunities you may be interested in. So in terms of the ways I connect with professors, one thing that Amy mentioned just now was office hours. And I believe I just mentioned it in my presentation as well. But in terms of what office hours are, basically, students who are interested in learning more about a particular course topic can go to a professor's office hours, which are specific hours during the week that a professor holds specifically for students to come in, ask questions, or just chat with about research, or really just talk about anything. And so I often went to my professor's office hours, first and foremost, to learn more about the material. If I had a question in class that I couldn't get to, I often went to go get that clarified. But then after that, I just like to chat with them about their research or what they're interested in, even why they got into being a professor in the first place. And so this is a great way to connect with professors outside of the classroom, especially as a lot of first year classes may be larger in class size, which can be a little bit intimidating at first. But I found that once I was able to go to office hours and connect with my professors in that way, it really, really made a difference in both how I learned, and it made a difference in learning about the opportunities that I had available to me. That's a fantastic question.
Amy, just building on one of the questions that I saw related to that subject, which was about how a prospective student can learn a bit more about a given program. I would recommend that one of the great tools for researching programs of study at UTM are our program plans. So on our website, and we'll link that in, there are very detailed descriptions of what all the programs of studies are that are available at UTM, and specifically what 4 years in a given program might look like. Mm-hmm. So it's a fantastic tool for really getting a sense of whether or not that program is a great fit for you, as well as I'll signal to our audience, because we're getting close to the 7 p.m. Toronto time, end time for the event, that we are going to continue to host a number of different events. The purpose of the event this evening was really to be able to share and hear from Saumya as a current student, her personal tour of UTM campus. So again, we invite you to potentially attend one of our upcoming UTM general admission sessions or one of the general U of T admission sessions. I've seen a number of questions come through about admissions averages. We'll also link in another tool which will detail all of the programs of studies that are available to students across U of T. We call it our UAB. And it also indicates what some of those general averages might look like from an admissions perspective to gain admission to UTM and U of T.
I think I'm muted. Thanks, Emily, for sharing that and highlighting those resources. You might have to scroll a little bit, but all these links that Emily mentioned have been shared throughout the presentation. So feel free to kind of peruse through the section where it says U of T Mississauga Future Students, and that's where we've shared those links during the conversation. I do have a question here now, going outside of academics and more so exploring our tri-campus system. So you've talked about the shuttle bus. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? For one, is it free, and how often? What's the service like? And if you've taken or have explored other U of T campuses, I'll also add that question.
That's a fantastic question. First, I can start off with the short answer. Yes, the shuttle bus is free if you are a UTM student. So if you're successful in your application and you end up enrolling at UTM, you will be able to use the shuttle bus for free just by showing your U of T student card. In terms of how often it's available, at the moment, due to COVID-19, the shuttle bus is not running. But generally, if you would like to check out the times for the shuttle bus, there is a website that the shuttle bus has where you can just view the time as well as what the next shuttle bus time is. This website was a lifesaver, especially when I was running across from the other side of campus trying to make the bus. So as I mentioned, I live in Pickering, which is actually quite close to the University of Toronto Scarborough campus. So interestingly enough, I actually visited the University of Toronto Scarborough a lot when, especially during the summer, because I would just go there to study, to explore the campus. I've never actually taken a course at another campus, but I have also taken the shuttle just to go and explore the St. George campus down in downtown Toronto. And so it's really a great way to explore other campuses and to get involved with the larger community at U of T, because as we like to say, we are one university, 3 campuses. And I think that reigns very true with the way the shuttle bus works, for sure.
Now,
Thank you so
Saumya, the
much.
fact that you signaled that it's a free resource, I recall that you were telling me just the other day that that was an important tip to make to our prospective students, because you only discovered that it was free in your second year, you mentioned. So wanted to signal that. And then Amy, I wanted to ask you a question, because I know that you've taken courses both, obviously you have your degree from Mississauga campus, but you've taken a number of courses at St. George, and I'd be curious to hear your advice or your experience in that space.
If students have the capacity to take courses at multiple campuses, I highly recommend it, because you not only get out of your little campus bubble, as how we kind of informally say it, but you really get to know the University of Toronto at a much larger space and make connections with other students. And going off of what Saumya said, we're one university, 3 campuses. There are student clubs that have a Mississauga, a Scarborough, a St. George chapter. And it's always fun when, of course, when we had the chance to all come together in one place, that we would collaborate and have joint events. So beyond just taking classes, I've also been part of smaller and larger communities across the University of Toronto. In terms of the classes, I have a much larger course selection for electives. I took a course in Christian studies and looking in sci-fi courses. I took a course on feminism within Christianity. And these were some courses that were unique to St. George. I've enjoyed taking these courses, getting to know the faculty there, and having an experience of what it is like to be at the downtown core, large campus spread out, which is definitely a different experience than Mississauga. And when I wanted a different kind of study area, I can go over to the libraries at the St. George campus, experience a little bit of that when I wanted a little break from Mississauga. So I definitely made use of the shuttle bus throughout my 5 years at UTM, got my money's worth, given that it's free, but really make use of that service and that option to get to know the University of Toronto. With the final minutes of our presentation, just we wrap up, I know, Emily, you mentioned about tips, so I just wanted to ask Saumya for like a quick tip to share with our prospective students and what to share about university life.
That is a fantastic question. And, it's such a broad question. So I'd love a moment to think about it. But I think in general, if there's anything I can say to both prospective students and students who are successful in their application to attend UTM, it's that there are so many resources available to you. Like I mentioned throughout the presentation, there's so many things that I didn't know existed until my later years at university. And so I would say explore all of the resources available to you. There's so many links that Amy has wonderfully provided in the chat to begin to even do your research even before you apply if you haven't applied yet. And so being able to really dig deep into those resources is incredibly important. And I really hope that you all make use of those if you so choose to attend.
Thank you so much, everyone. We are going to wrap things up now. We really appreciate your participation and for joining us this evening. We will be hosting another session in January, so you're welcome to come back where we will have a different student giving their personal tour, as well as please check out our at UTM Future social channels, as well as utm.utoronto.ca/future, where you'll be able to find a number of resources, including on-demand videos that you can play and information about upcoming other information sessions that we will be hosting that will take a deeper dive into the admissions process. Thank you so very much for joining us. We hope you have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world today.